Are security forces torturing teenagers in northern Iraq? Human Rights Watch says the Kurdish Regional Government is beating confessions out of young Daesh suspects. I'm Imran Garda, and today's newsmaker is the torture allegations against the KRG. If you don't tell us the truth, we'll call some guys and they'll beat you and break your bones. That's one teenage prisoner's account of the threats he faced while being interrogated by KRG security forces. Dozens like him were detained in a facility in Erbil and told to read a confession written by their captors. No lawyers, no international observers. And if they refused, they would be beaten with plastic pipes, put into stress positions and given electrical shocks. That's according to Human Rights Watch. They interviewed 20 boys, all of whom have either been charged or convicted of being a part of the Daesh terror group, with many receiving trials that barely lasted a few minutes. And while HRW says their treatment amounts to war crimes, what may be most disturbing is that the rights group first sounded the alarm 2 years ago. Shoaib Hassan reports.
They were a critical part of the coalition that smashed through Daesh defences in 2017. The Peshmerga, the Kurdish Regional Government's forces, fought alongside the Iraqi army to bring an end to the terror group's reign. But with the fighting came accusations of human rights abuses against civilians.
As Mosul is increasingly liberated from ISIL, we are seeing an alarming rise in threats, specifically of forced evictions against those suspected of being ISIL members or whose relatives are alleged to be involved with ISIL. Threats that have also been made in other areas of Iraq.
These reports have persisted, and just last week, Human Rights Watch accused KRG authorities of torturing child detainees. The group says the torture includes beating and electric shocks to coerce ISIS confessions. Human Rights Watch says it interviewed 20 boys aged between 14 and 17, all arrested on charges of being Daesh informers or fighters. It's not the first time such allegations have emerged in post-Daesh Iraq. Accusations of torture and reprisal killings by Iraqi special forces groups and pro-government Shia militias have been catalogued by media organizations and other rights groups like Amnesty International. It's also not the first time that the Kurdish Regional Government forces have been accused of such acts. But the reaction of the authorities in Erbil is the same. They deny any wrongdoing. In a statement, a spokesman says the KRG has granted access to the facility to the International Committee of the Red Cross and UN agencies, and that they have not received any complaints of ill treatment and torture from the IS child detainees. The KRG added, if there were any instances discovered by the KRG of mistreatment of detainees in its custody, the matter would be immediately followed upon according to the applicable laws. Human Rights Watch says it stands by its report, and that more needs to be done to prevent such atrocities from taking place. So, how widespread is the use of torture within the KRG? And is monitoring by international agencies enough to prevent violations, particularly in the case of children? Shoaib Hassan, the Newsmakers.
Well, to discuss this, I'm joined now from Erbil by the KRG's coordinator for international advocacy, Dindar Zabari. And in Baghdad is Human Rights Watch's senior Iraq researcher and author of the report, Bilkis Villa. Thanks both of you for joining us. Dindar Zabari, let me start with you, sir. Did KRG forces torture kids into confessing that they were Daesh members?
Thank you for invitation for the program. KRG certainly not. KRG did not torture. KRG has hosted 1,300,000 of IDP Sunni Arabs, mostly from other territories of Iraq. Some of them turn up in the reception centers or in the IDP camps where they were having some sort of affiliations with ISIL. As such, security has arrested them, and all has gone through the normal process of arrest under judicial authority, full superiority, and there are special facilities for those who have been under 18 years old, juvenile, and women, where they have been kept differently from the adults to look at their daily situation and make sure that they are well treated. And the strategy is to bring them back to society
I want to ask you
as
one more
soon as
question.
possible.
Certainly. I want to ask you one more question before I bring in Bilqis. Can you tell me with absolute certainty from your end that all of those who have been tried and convicted of being members of Daesh or ISIS have been tried and convicted fairly?
All who have been arrested, they were arrested by the judge warrant under the judicial process. And those who have been convicted, they were convicted within the laws and legislations that are certainly available. And there are also a big number of them, around 1,400 of the ISIL detainees that have recently submitted KRG authorities to Iraqi federal authorities. And in terms of those who have been convicted, especially with juvenile, the conviction do not goes beyond 3 to 4 years sentence, because there is special care, special treatment, and special regulations for them.
Bilqis Villa, no torture, fair trials. I'm assuming you disagree. Tell me why.
Yes, I do disagree. Earlier in November 18, 21, and 22, my colleague and I from Human Rights Watch went to the reformatory in Erbil that houses child detainees and female detainees. And we had the opportunity of interviewing 20 boys, 16 of whom, in private, separate interviews, told us unprompted that they had been tortured. The torture had occurred when they were captured by the Asayish, the security forces, but before they had been transferred to this special facility, a facility indeed where the treatment is better. They were tortured in the context of interrogations and in the context very specifically of extracting a confession. They were beaten, in some cases electrocuted, until they told interrogators what interrogators wanted to hear. Now, the reason that these testimonies are so credible is because they are practically identical to what we heard 2 years ago when we went to that reformatory. We interviewed at the time 19 boys, 17 of whom again spoke about torture, spoke about the exact same stress positions, the same kind of beatings.
Okay, so Dindar, beating, stress positions, electric shocks on boys in their custody. Isn't it in your interest as the KRG government to look into this, to take it seriously, and to find out who's been doing this? Because there seems to be strong, credible information coming out that this is happening. Why don't you sort it out rather than deny it?
Yeah. First of all, KRG has given full access to most of the international NGOs to visit the detainees, a specific one in Erbil, which Ms. Bilqis has indicated right now. So far, there is a procedure in this regard. There must be complaint by the victims themselves or by the detainees themselves during the investigation with the judge of investigation. Or there must be a filing within the medical record of the investigation to indicate that there is some sort of torture has been conducted. Now, for a judge to decide and for the authority to decide, there must be reasons and there must be sort of a complaint have been submitted to our authorities. Just for the Human Rights Watch themselves, we have requested on several times that if there are any sort of allegations, we would be quite happy and ready to discuss.
These are the allegations.
To go together and to
but Dindar,
the process.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, and there's a slight delay here. Certainly, there's a slight delay between us, so it makes it a bit worse. But let's try and power through this. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but Bilqis is making the allegation here. The report itself is the allegation. And so they're saying, here's the information, do something about it, and you're questioning the credibility.
The credibility, yes. I'm questioning the credibility of these
On
allegations.
what basis?
Because
On what basis?
herself, she is a representative of Human Rights Watch. Yeah. On what basis? She has the full access to authorities. She has the full access to myself and to many other colleagues
you're saying you gave Human Rights. You're saying you gave Human Rights Watch access to the detainees. Right. You're saying you gave Human Rights Watch access to the detainees, and that's wonderful. That's good. And when they speak to the detainees say we were tortured, and then you say we don't believe you. So I don't know. What do you want? Some sort of praise for giving them access? It's the more important thing is what the detainees are telling them, isn't it?
It is easy enough for any detainee around the world to claim that he has been tortured. But I think there must be certain process that, or certain procedures that the government of KRG or any government around the world to have the details about it, the medical record, the file of the investigation of the specific detainee. So there are certain process that,
so
the government must make action on it. But, if I hear this from the report itself.
Okay, so let me ask Bilkis. Bilkis, let's just clarify this for the record then. The accusation from Dindar is that you're going and you're meeting these young boys and they're telling you a story and you're not verifying the credibility of that story with supplementary or complementary evidence that goes with it. Has that been what has been going on?
Absolutely not. I think first and foremost, as I already said, the level of consistency between boys over a 2-year period who we are interviewing alone, who are not preparing for our interview, who are not sitting together and making up stories. The consistency of the torture that they're describing and the context of that torture is remarkable in and of itself. I would add that 5 of these boys told us in front of the investigative judge, when they were brought before the judge, they told the judge that they had been tortured. The judges, in each instance, they said, simply ignored that claim and moved on with the trial. So I ask Dr. Zabadi, if these boys are trying to ask for an investigation, ask for forensic medical reports by telling the judge that they're being tortured, and that allegation is ignored by the judge, then of course it's extremely difficult for these boys to do what he's suggesting and to lodge an official complaint.
Yeah, okay, that's an interesting point, and let's just dig into the report for a moment. Dindar, have a little listen to this. The Human Rights Watch report cites a 14-year-old boy called Khalef who described his trial in August. He said, at the trial, the judge asked if I was ISIS or not. I said I wasn't. He read my confession. I said my confession came from torture. But the judge didn't say anything. He sentenced me to 6 months. The trial lasted about 10 minutes. Dindar, doesn't that warrant a closer look?
This is few stories conveyed or transferred or said by some of the detainees. We talk about thousands of detainees in Kurdistan region, and the process of judicial process goes on very well. Now, with the specific cases that you mentioned, I'm asking Human Rights Watch very, very clearly and very transparently, if there is a record, again, medical record or investigation record that indicates certain torture or indicates certain sort of confession on the torture basis, why they are not sharing with ourselves? Why they are not sharing with the government? Now, there is no single evidence or witness inside the report of Human Rights Watch that indicate what the stories are, what the story says.
Bilkis, do you have witnesses and additional evidence to provide beyond the report?
What we have are the individual victims themselves. In some cases, there are marks on bodies, marks that we won't be able to verify months later were potentially a result of the torture, but that need to be investigated. Again, the consistency of the narratives, the consistency of the types of torture used at the very least merit serious investigation by the Kurdistan Regional Government. Now, when Dr. Zabari is talking about why haven't we provided forensic medical examinations, those would have to be ordered by judges. If judges are not investigating allegations of torture and are not ordering the forensic medical exams, those exams do not exist. That's why we're not able to provide them. What we have called on since 2 years is for a serious investigation of these allegations and for the government to really try to get to the bottom of what types of techniques are being used during interrogations against not only children but also adult suspects.
Yeah, so Bilkis, something I'm trying to get crystal clarity on is, from among those 20 boys that you spoke to, do they have anybody else to talk to if they want to bring up a complaint? Because the point being made by Dr. Zabari is that they have lots of avenues to register a complaint and provide the evidence and so on. Besides talking to you, do they have other people to turn to?
Well, ideally, and as per law, they should have a lawyer. A lawyer would be the way for them to lodge a complaint and take their allegations forward. However, of the 20 boys, 16 had no idea at all that they had the right to a lawyer. Authorities had never told them they had the right to a lawyer. Or they thought, maybe I can get a lawyer, but my parents would have to pay significant amounts of money. Most of these families do not have that kind of money. None of them knew that the state had an obligation to appoint them with a free lawyer. Of the 4 boys who thought they had a lawyer, 2 weren't even sure. They said someone showed up in their trial, was speaking Kurdish to the judge, and might have been their lawyer, but never directly interacted with them. So these boys do not have someone to speak to as their advocate who can speak to a judge and appeal on their behalf to investigate allegations of torture.
Dindar Zabari, these kids don't have anybody to talk to or turn to. That's why they go to Human Rights Watch.
No, that's not true. That's not true. Most of the detainees, ISIL detainees, they have been fully informed that they have a right and access to a lawyer, and on the cost of the government, a lawyer has been assigned for them in the day of the investigation and prior and after. UNICEF recently has joined the platform, and UNICEF already has assigned in that specific reformatory center that Ms. Bilkis referred to it. A lawyer has been assigned by UNICEF to have again full access for the juvenile. Some other international NGOs through the implementing partners like local NGOs. I have a list of those names. Again, they are visiting these juvenile individuals. U.S. Consulate General and again other diplomatic missions in Erbil also. I myself was one of them that have accompanied them to visit some of the detainees in the past in the same reformatory facilities. And then KRG has no benefit to have any confession under torture, because KRG, if you look at the list of the detainees in Kurdistan region, we have thousands of detainees. Some of the detainees in Huwayja a year and a half ago, they have submitted themselves to Peshmerga forces. They have already confessed they were ISIL, and they prefer to submit themselves to KRG, not to the Hashd al-Sha'bi or mobilization forces. So there is no need KRG put anyone under specific measures to confess. We have, as I said, very much in favor of returning these juvenile to their own home and their own families. And that's why the efforts are underway with Baghdad in this regard. And recently, some of them have been again transferred to Nainawa. Now, the problem is these juveniles, they have lost their families. And for KRG to get access to their families, it has a lot of difficulty for this. But never mind, we kept them in special facilities, not under ASAISH, not under anti-terrorism department. And recently, even special classes have been put in place for them, like Arabic language classes, to make sure they follow up like E-class programs. So the KRG wants to help them, to bring them back to society. No need to have any sort of confession for 20, 30 of these juveniles, where we speak about thousands of them in the past few years.
Bilkis?
I think it would be very important, given the 2 years of allegations that we've been raising, to see a commitment, a clear commitment from the Kurdistan Regional Government that they will investigate these allegations. 2 years ago, after our last report, Dr. Zabari said that the KRG had launched a commission to investigate and would be doing so in conjunction with the UN assistance mission in Iraq. I have tried for the last 2 years to get an update as to what that commission was able to find and what their work included. We have received no information whatsoever about this commission to investigate. which leads me to think that very little, if not nothing, has been done to look into our allegations. If our allegations are baseless, then conduct an investigation and prove that they're baseless.
Okay, very finally, Dindar Zabari, where's the commission?
I think very good point. Ms. Balkis has referred to it. I personally chaired that commission. It's not a commission. It's a joint committee between KRG and UNICEF and UNAMI. And we have even requested UNAMI and UNICEF to come on board and to be with us for the not only investigation, but to follow up on the situation of detainees in general in presence in KRG. And I think the same question must be addressed to UNAMI and UNICEF. I have invited them many times, and I have taken them to anti-terrorism department and ASAISH and juvenile presence, where they already have full access to do their own investigations. But the question must be addressed to themselves, because from our side we are ready, and we have that access available for the colleagues from UN and specifically UNICEF and UNAMI.
Okay, well, I guess given the latest allegations leveled in the Human Rights Watch report, I guess you're taking it as a matter of urgency to get that commission or committee going, because clearly there's a bit of a traffic jam here with information, and it's been important, I think, to chair this conversation between the two of you. I thank you both for joining us here on the Newsmakers, Dindar Zabari and Bilkis Vella. Looking forward to chatting to you again. Coming up on the program, we debate India's proposed citizenship bill. Is the ruling party trying to give migrants more rights or take them away from Muslims? And could this robot soon take your job? We forecast the future of artificial intelligence. India says a bill passed in the lower house of parliament is designed to give migrant citizenship as a humanitarian gesture. It's a move aimed at protecting people who are persecuted in their homelands. But to be eligible, you have to have the right religion. Hindus, Sikhs, Buddhists, Jains, Parsis and Christians from Muslim-majority countries can apply. Muslims, though, are prohibited. And that has critics in an uproar, with protests erupting in the state of Assam, where last year millions of long-term residents were effectively stripped of citizenship and declared foreigners. So, is this citizenship amendment bill a helping hand or a political game by the ruling Hindu Nationalist Party? That debate in a moment. But first, here's Shoaib Hassan again.
It's seen as the latest move by India's ruling party to appease its hardline supporters. A proposal to give Indian citizenship to undocumented migrants, but not if they're Muslims.
If there are any migrants who are the victims of persecution now living anywhere in this country, they can apply for Indian citizenship. And after that, they'll be able to live in any state of the country like any other Indian citizen.
The legislation is to be voted on in India's lower house of parliament, known as the Lok Sabha. Critics say the bill is discriminatory because it excludes Muslims, India's largest religious minority. It's already led to protests in the country's eastern provinces, where a record number of refugees and migrants has been arriving.
It's a divisive bill. It will create problems for everybody in Assam, Bengal. Bengali Hindus, Bengali Muslims will suffer because of the bill. We wanted the government not to go ahead with the bill.
But leaders in the ruling BJP party insist they will get it approved, even though it's likely to be rejected by the upper house, which is controlled by opposition parties. Analysts say the BJP is only pushing the law to rally its Hindu nationalist base ahead of general elections in May. Critics say the legislation's in line with other policies by the ruling party, such as criminalizing Muslim divorce and turning a blind eye to mobs that have lynched Muslims for cattle trading. Others have protested what they call the instigation of religious violence under the leadership of Prime Minister Narendra Modi.
And we are really here to tell Modi that we are standing with the many people in India who are protesting about what we see as a rise of fascism, in which Narendra Modi has made it very clear he wants to turn India into an exclusive right-wing Hindu state in which minorities, Dalits, Muslims, women can be targeted, can be raped, can be killed with impunity and are basically excluded from the nation. And we're here to say that is not acceptable.
Is the BJP then deliberately playing the religion card to ensure success in upcoming elections? And how big a threat is this to the world's largest democracy? Shoaib Hassan, The Newsmakers.
Well, let's go to our panel now. In New Delhi is a senior member of the ruling BJP, Sudhanshu Mittal. In Guwahati is the chief advisor for the All Assam Students Union, Samujal Bhattacharya. And with me here in the studio is TRT World senior producer Mahbub Jilani. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us on the Newsmakers. Samujal Bhattacharya, let me start with you. What do you think about this bill?
Yes, this bill is a communal bill. The people of Assam and people of Northeastern region, the All Assam Students Union, the Northeast Student Organization, NESTO, we are opposing this bill. The all indigenous people of Assam and Northeast, we are opposing this bill because this bill protects the interests of the illegal Bangladeshis. There is a history because after historic Assam movement, the Assam Accord was signed. As per Assam Accord, those who have entered into Assam, Hindus and Muslims, up to 71, they can stay in Assam with the right of citizenship. But those who have entered after 71, Hindus and Muslims, they will be expelled from the country. It was the spirit of the Assam Accord. By diluting the spirit of the Assam Accord, and the central government, they are imposing this citizenship amendment bill on the people of Northeastern region. So the indigenous people of Northeastern region, we are opposing it because it's a threat to the cultural identity of the indigenous people of Northeastern region. Because Northeast and Assam is not a dumping ground for illegal Bangladeshis. So for the sake of protection of the illegal Bangladeshis, the central government is imposing the citizenship amendment bill on the people of Assam and Northeastern region. Okay. We cannot accept it. We are opposing it, and the movement is on. Education is on throughout the 7 states of the Northeastern region.
Okay, that's interesting. So Sudhanshu Mittal, what's fascinating about this is, in doing my reading, there are those who criticize it because they see it as anti-Muslim. There are those who criticize it and they see it as something that is an extension of the BJP's exclusionary Hindu nationalism, where they're open to everybody else except for Muslims. And then there are people such as Samujal in the AASU who are saying this protects the interests of illegal Bangladeshis. Which one of those criticisms sticks?
Now let's take each issue at a time. First, you said it is anti-Muslim. Now show me one provision of the bill which is against the Muslims.
Well, it excludes them.
Not
the Citizenship Amendment Bill provides that persons belonging to minority communities, namely Hindus, Sikhs, Buddhists, Jains, Parsis, and Christians from Afghanistan, Bangladesh, and Pakistan, shall not be considered illegal migrants. It excludes Muslims. That's why people say it's anti-Muslim. Go ahead.
Anti-Muslim, it has to be. Once you say it is anti-Muslim, then it must specify a provision which is detrimental to the Muslims.
It named everybody else except for Muslims.
Yeah, so that's not being anti-Muslim, it is being pro-somebody.
It's being good at wording things.
No, look, I think there is a difference between, as they say, absence of ugliness is no indication to beauty. Or absence of beauty is not indicative of ugliness.
Okay. But Sudhanshu, the Citizenship Act as it was said nothing about religion. Why has it been amended to include that distinction?
I have to explain this.
Okay, so explain it. Why has it been amended to include that distinction, and why has it left out Muslims?
Yeah, it has left it for a simple reason. This bill seeks to protect people who have faced religious persecution in Bangladesh, Pakistan, and Afghanistan. These are 3 Islamic countries, and the minorities in these Islamic countries have been persecuted and they have fled from these countries. Now, if they are fleeing from this, would that religious persecution, if they seek asylum, or if they enter India to escape religious persecution, what should be the response? When you compare it to the Muslims, see, Muslims leave Bangladesh or Pakistan for reasons of economic prosperity. So they see greener pastures in India, and that is what is
But it is interesting in terms of emissions. Sudhanshu, just on this issue, in terms of emissions, what's fascinating is the only situation in the region which has been termed a genocide by the United Nations is of the Rohingya, who happen to be Muslims. So they wouldn't get citizenship, would they?
First, so you stand corrected that this is not anti-Muslim. And secondly, I have explained that people who have faced religious persecutions have been brought in this ambit because they have not left their country for the... Now, one interesting fact I must tell you. When in 1947, there was a partition, the total Hindu population of Bangladesh was 22.3. Today, it has reduced to 10.5. They have left because of the religious persecution. Look what has happened in Afghanistan. When you had the destruction of the Buddhist statue and all the Buddhists were driven out, the Christians were driven out. And this is not just Hindu, it talks about Buddhists,
okay, so
Sikhs,
hold on. Okay, so
can
we fast forward for a
all
second?
religious communities which were there,
Sudhanshu, can we fast forward for a second?
Can
we fast forward for a second? The claim by Samujal that this protects the interests of illegal Bangladeshis. Address that for me, please.
Yeah, when Samujwal's Bhattacharya ji says that it protects illegal Bangladeshis, I think the difference seems to have got lost to him, that coming to India for employment or for economic benefits is different than religious persecution. Secondly, he must talk numbers. The entire claim of his organization was that there were 1 crore illegal Bangladeshis which had entered India. Now, when the NRC took place, I'm surprised that there are only 3 million people there. And Mr. Samujal Bhattacharya's organization should have been worried. What happened to the 7 million Muslim Bangladeshis which had come to Assam?
Okay.
How have they now become the citizens?
Okay. So we're going to get him to address that.
Lost.
Okay.
And now, one more. How many people? He must talk about the illegal Bangladeshis which are sought to be regularized. How many of them? There are 8 lakh total. In NRC, there are only 8 lakh Hindus. And not all of them are from Bangladesh.
Okay.
So if you look at the total number of people which this bill seeks to help, is a very small number.
Okay. And we're going to get Samujal to respond to that in a moment. But Mahbub, let's try and now step back, panoramic, bird's eye view of all of this. As we look at this debate, as it is raging in India right now, a lot of people can't agree on what the parameters of the debate are because they don't know what the bill is truly about. Can we actually ever know what the bill is truly about, what the true intentions of the bill are?
Well, the basic parameters of the bill says that it's basically meant for everyone except Muslims and Jews. And it also says that people who have come to India illegally until 2014 can become the citizens of India. And that has kind of triggered a political, storm in the northeastern part of the country, because Northeast essentially has been a country of different ethnicities, and ethnic nationalism has always been one of the major aspects of its electoral politics. So if we see the Northeast of the 1970s, there has been, or even the 80s and in the 90s, there have been insurgencies in the Northeast for just to cater the ethnic nationalism, as well as demanding some sort of autonomy or even a separate statehood, because they always believed in their own identity.
Right.
And a move like this, essentially, it kind of threatens the demographic balance the Northeast has as of now, and that's precisely why people in the Northeast have been protesting against it.
Samujal Bhattacharya, if this becomes enshrined in law and becomes practically implemented, what will you do?
We are opposing this bill, and the agitation is on throughout northeastern region. I like to clarify one thing. India is for Indians, and Assam and Northeast is in India. So India and Assam and Northeast is not for illegal Bangladeshis. That is the fundamental question. Number 2, the date of detection of illegal foreigner in the country is 1948. By this Assam Accord, we have accepted the burden in between 48 to 71 Hindus and Muslims in the state of Assam by giving them citizenship. Beyond 71, Assam is a very small state. We cannot take the load of illegal Bangladeshis, that he may be Hindu, he may be Muslim. We are not against Muslim, we are not against Hindus, we are not against any community. We are against illegal Bangladeshis. And Sudhanshu Mishra Sahab has said regarding NRC, it is their BJP government in center, their BJP government in Assam, and the Supreme Court is monitoring the whole process of updating NRC. And NRC is meant for Indian citizens. So their government has failed. If something is wrong, the BJP government in center and central government, they have failed. But it's a legal process. It's a transparent process. It is monitored by the Supreme Court of India. But the whole machinery is the government. But us too, as an organization, all Assam Students Union and the Northeast Student Organization, we are working for a illegal Bangladesh's name fee correct NRC. We are in the ground. And regarding the process of claims and objections, only the ASU supported the people they have filed objection against illegal Bangladesh. So the mudslinging is not the answer of the solution. The fundamental thing is very clear. We are not communal. We are not against Muslims. We are not against Hindus. We are not against any community. But the thing is very clear. India is for Indians.
Okay, Sudhanshu Mishra. Okay, Sudhanshu Mishra.
And Assam Northeast and India.
Okay, Sudhanshu, come in.
Now, as I said, please look. Pakistan is an Islamic state. Bangladesh is an Islamic state. And Afghanistan is an Islamic state. So when you say why Muslims have been excluded, they've been excluded for the reason that these are Islamic states. So there is no religious persecution in these Islamic states. Religious persecution of these Islamic states is against the minority.
Okay, but India was not set up as a Hindu state India was not set up as a state that excludes Muslims, was it?
We as a humanitarian state are sensitive to religious persecution in other countries. And people who have faced religious persecutions, they have sought asylum or they have entered India, we are giving them protection. What is wrong in it? If people face Islamic persecution in Islamic countries and they come to India, should they not be protected? That is so substantially different than people coming to India for economic gains. This distinction doesn't seem to be dawning on the organization Mr. Samuchar Bhattacharya is representing. He's talking about communalism, he's talking about India for Indians, yes. But India has a responsibility, a humanitarian responsibility as well.
Yeah,
but
Mr. Mishra,
there is persecution, we stand by people who are persecuted.
Okay, let me ask you something. Just 1 second, because you mentioned Pakistan. There was an interesting opinion piece written in Bloomberg recently by Mihir Sharma asking, is India becoming a Hindu Pakistan? A new law favoring non-Muslim immigrants threatens the country's core identity as a land for all faiths. So, is India becoming a Hindu Pakistan, Sudhanshu?
Very, very interesting. This exhibits the perverseness of the mind. This bill has Christians there also. It has Parsis there also. It has Sikhs there also. It has Jains there also. Now, Christians have faced the worst kind of persecutions there. They are being hanged on the issue of blasphemy. Now, look, if you say these people must be protected because of persecution of religious persecution.
Okay, but it doesn't happen. So this is the problem. It doesn't happen in a vacuum, right? At the same time, Muslims are being lynched in India for eating beef, right? So the exclusion doesn't happen.
What are we discussing?
It doesn't happen in a vacuum.
I think you have a.
It doesn't happen in a vacuum.
I don't think you are addressing to what we are talking.
Okay, but here's the point.
We are talking about that.
There's a context. There's a context.
You don't have a valid point because there is no context because you have generalized an exception. An exception does not prove the rule. So don't use this as don't use exceptions to defame a rule.
Christians are protected in Pakistan according to the law, and there are exceptions when Christians are killed by religious fanatics. So that would be generalizing an exception to the rule as well.
I don't think you've read the connotations of what the Pakistani Prime
Here's my point. There's a context of Muslims feeling persecuted in India, and they've been excluded from this bill. So you say it's humanitarian. You say it's humanitarian. A critical view of it could be this is convenient, especially ahead of elections, right?
I think we have a commitment to this right from day one. So saying this is convenient for election is again, I said, it is something, it's a figment of imagination of somebody who's anti-India, who's anti the people of India, and who does not have the humanitarian sensitiveness within him. He has to see politics in everything. I can't help it. The issue is simple. And as I said, how many people? You've said in Assam, is Mr. Samujwal Bhattacharya going to admit that the claims he had made that there are 1 crore Bangladeshis who have entered Assam was a false claim all this while? Would he say that? No, he will not say that, because he knows the reality that through unscrupulous ways, the Bangladeshis who had entered there have become have got enlisted in the NCR. Now he says it is your government, your fault. Mr. Bhattacharya, you are not, you should be agitating against us. You should be demanding that the people who had entered, how have they become members of the NCR, but you are silent. That shows your bias in the entire issue.
Okay, Sudhanshu, and you've had a fair platform to express yourself fully. Mahbub, wrap us up here.
So a few things have been touched upon here. I'll start with the idea of having this bill on humanitarian grounds. Critics in India are saying that the bill is problematic because if it's humanitarian grounds and inclusive, why it's excluding Muslims primarily. And at the same time, just a week before introducing this bill, India deported 7 refugees, Rohingya refugees, from the country on the basis of, I don't know what, because it's a well-known fact they've been persecuted in Myanmar, and that's a religious minority there. Secondly, this NRC, which is being debated here, is again being criticized in India for being a flawed process of a citizenship test for all these people who've been who come to northeastern part of the country after 1971, because there are so many cases wherein a twin brother has been termed as has been excluded from the list of the citizenship record, and his other brother is in the list, while as a former army soldier who happens to be Muslim has been also excluded from the list, and a 72-year-old teacher who's born and raised in India and is served in a government position has been excluded from the list.
And Mahbub, just very finally, people have taken to the streets.
The exceptions will prove the rule. I think
fair enough. And you say these are exceptions. Okay, the guy's giving some examples.
These are exceptions. Do they prove the rule?
There are many cases like that.
When you are dealing with the identification of 4 crore people, if there are, say, 1,000 or 2,000, 3,000 mistakes, is this what proves the rule?
Sudhanshu, you could say these are exceptions, certainly. You could say these are exceptions. Undoubtedly, you have every right to, and I guess Mahbub has every right to mention examples of this thing not working.
Except individual cases. That's why I'm saying it is so biased.
No, it's good to have individual cases.
A generality. He must talk about
the futures are being ruined because of this individual.
When you take one case, I mean, when you are talking about 4 crore people, naturally they're going to be mistakes.
Okay, naturally. Listen, gentlemen, listen. This is the worst thing about television. Okay, the worst part of my job is I have to...
system just because you have a bias.
The worst part of my job is I have to put a lid on everything because we're completely out of time. Sudhanshu Mittal, Samujwal Bhattacharya and Mahbub Jilani, thanks for joining us on the Newsmakers.
Bring the AI brain, I mean the perception, the algorithm, and the controlling together. It can enable different wheeled robots to see the world, understand the space.
This year's Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas left one question on many people's minds. When will the robots take over? Artificial intelligence was everywhere at the world's biggest tech and gadget show. You can now play ping pong with a robot or hire one as your personal assistant. A Chinese company even designed a robot that teaches children how to swim. So, is this the newest helpful tech of today or the new world order of tomorrow? Well, let's ask Aisha Khanna. She's the CEO and co-founder of Addo AI, a leading artificial intelligence firm, and she joins us now from Singapore. Aisha, good to have you on the Newsmakers. A lot of people have a lot of anxiety about AI.
Great to be here.
So what is it? Are we facing a scary future, or are there opportunities ahead and we're just being a little bit too negative about this?
Well, I think there's a lot of optimism around artificial intelligence. I run an artificial intelligence solutions firm, so I see every day the value that we bring by increasing automation, personalizing customer preferences, doing predictive maintenance, and also improving urbanization and smart cities. However, artificial intelligence, like any technology, is a double-edged sword. So if you don't, as human beings, take care that the security of the artificial intelligence algorithms or that any manipulation that can be done with them is not avoided, then of course it can lead us down to some dark paths as well.
Okay, so I've read a lot of Yuval Noah Harari and other people who have some very dark views of what might happen. Taking a panoramic view of this, are humans possibly going to be made obsolete because of the advent of AI, or might we develop into two types of humans, one type being gods and the other slaves?
Look, I think we need to move away a little bit from this science fiction scenarios and concentrate on the reality of AI today. Artificial intelligence today is very good at what we call narrow AI, which means that it can do two things very well. It can mine huge amounts of data, which human beings cannot, and therefore lend new kinds of insights, such as when a machine is going to fail, or such as what the preferences of a customer may be. Or it can automate a lot of routine tasks, such as customer service requests or manufacturing assembly lines. But it is nowhere at the point where we can say it is conscious or that it will be able to completely replace the human imagination, the human empathy, strategic thinking, or anything like that. Now, down the road, if one was to be very speculative, about a century down the road, one could imagine a scenario where parts of us are augmented through artificial intelligence. And in that sense, how we design AI today and the regulations that we put around it will determine if there will be a few big brother type players, or whether we will really achieve the promise of AI, which is to democratize access to services such as education and healthcare for the emerging middle class and poor around the world.
Right, and you talk about the emerging middle class and poor around the world. So setting aside the science fiction scenarios, as you requested, a lot of the collective anxiety revolves around people feeling or fearing mass unemployment, right? So practically speaking, what do we need to get good at in order to survive this uncertain future where AI might play a bigger role?
I think that's now a very good question. Everywhere I go, across Asia, Europe, or America, there is understandable fear that part of their job can be automated. And I think that fear is very valid. So the question then is, how can we adapt to the increasing automation of routine tasks? And the right way to do it is to educate oneself. So the way that we recommend in Singapore is, and the Singapore government is encouraging all its citizens to do some basic education in coding and to have an intuitive sense of how technology works for their domain. So for banking, for example, we know that over 30% of bankers perhaps will lose their job unless they pivot themselves to working in teams with fintech entrepreneurs, with artificial intelligence engineers, and developing data-driven financial solutions. So what we need to do is we need to learn how to collaborate with AI engineers, with data scientists, with technologists, and we need to be open to new kinds of innovations that are more data-driven than the jobs that we have right now. And this openness and adaptability will actually make us, I think, eternally marketable, because we will see disruption happening constantly in the coming decades.
You're closer to the technological developments than I am, than the rest of us are right now. What excites you about what's just ahead?
Okay, for me, the most exciting thing in Asia, and that's why you'll see in Asia, in ASEAN, Malaysia, Thailand, Indonesia, Vietnam, Singapore, we are very optimistic of artificial intelligence because we are surrounded by problems of inefficiencies, of lack of access. And so the fact that you can get telemedicine and healthcare through Prudential and Babylon, which are two companies using AI-based doctors, or you can get better transportation through optimization of traffic and others, or smart city technologies, or that education can be made available and democratized to millions of people. This is what excites us. And this is the kinds of CEOs that we show are really able to make a difference in the population of these countries. So it's not some very sci-fi scenario. It's really almost a low-hanging fruit that with data and with artificial intelligence, we can unlock so much value from removing these inefficiencies and really give people access to the things that have unjustly been kept from them, which are basic services in cities.
So you're telling me not to worry too much about AI. How do I know you're a real person?
That's a good question. I'll tell you why it's a good question. Because at some point, you might not be able to tell. There are algorithms now where somebody could literally record 3 seconds of my voice or a couple of minutes of my video and be able to put it online, and you wouldn't know whether it's Aisha or an avatar that's pretending to be me. That is why the governance is quite important. In countries like Singapore, we now have an ethics and governance committee around artificial intelligence. And I think that what we'll begin to see is more and more companies and activists coming forward and trying to build algorithms that can inspect other algorithms to make sure that we don't have this kind of manipulation. And that is a real danger.
Aisha Khanna, really good to talk to you. Thank you very much for joining us on the Newsmakers. That's all for this edition of The Newsmakers with me, Imran Gada. Check out more of our stories on YouTube, Facebook and Twitter. Remember to like, follow and subscribe. Next time, we look at what's in store for the UK and Europe after an historic Brexit vote in the British Parliament. Until then, thanks for watching. Bye-bye.